Hi, thanks for joining me. Welcome. To my subscribers, thank you so much. To my new subscribers, welcome. Today is a very exciting and a very important video that I've wanted to make for an extremely long time. Stick around, there's a lot in this video that I'm going to share with you. I think this video is great for beginners, advanced and intermediate shavers, and anyone that likes to shave with a razor. This is for you. So I haven't used a open comb razor on my channel yet. So for my first shave with an open comb razor for the channel, I'm shaving with the legendary Probak razor. This is probably one of the most important razors that have ever been produced ever in the history of shaving. And the reason why it's so important is because this gentleman who created this razor spawned the generations of shavers that have followed since the early 1900s. And people don't know who he is, but he is a titan. He is a Nikola Tesla of shaving. Most people believe it's King C. Gillette, and King C. Gillette is more like Thomas Edison. And Jacques Gaisman is the real Nikola Tesla of these safety razors, in my opinion. There's no doubt that King C. Gillette was a very, very clever man who invented the disposable razor blade. And let's talk a little bit more about that and get into today's shave. So what happened was that the first safety razors were from the Camfi brothers, a German in origin, and they were very popular in America and the United States. And what these initial safety razors were all about was taking a razor blade and turning it in with a handle at 90 degrees. And what it did is it produced these wedges. And so these wedges of these knife wedges were extremely common and popular to shave with. However, they had the problem that you would need to sharpen them over and over again. And the Rolls razor this is a Rolls razor. It's a good example of one of these wedges, and it's got a safety bar. So, and the way these wedges worked it's basically a knife that's in the shape of a wedge, and it's hollow ground. So I'm just opening up one of the Rolls razors, and it's in its original packaging, which is really cool for collectors. And let's take it out. It's made in England, and the steel out of England was considered the best in the world, the finest out of Sheffield. And so you can see that this is what the wedge looked like. And this would have to be sharpened, all of these wedges. And they invented all kinds of mechanisms to shave these wedges to produce this really sharp edge to replace the straight razor. And Nikola Tesla actually had, we can find in his museum, he owned two razors. One of them was a straight razor by Henkel's. I think that's from Sollinger in Germany. And the other one that he had was actually a 1930s Gillette open comb razor. He had a set there. And so this is one of the wedges that is for the Rolls razors. And the Rolls razor comes with an auto sharpening mechanism where you strop and sharpen the blade in this mechanism. You put the wedge in here, and then you just run this up and down, and that sharpens it. And I'll demonstrate that in a future video. Not today, but that's where these wedges came from. Put everything aside. Okay, and then we're going to get into our shave about the 6-minute mark, hopefully. And then what happened was that King C. Gillette produced a razor blade, and there were 3 hole punches in it. And then Henry Gaisman looked at all the problems that existed, and he created a universal razor blade, which is a razor blade that we still use today. It's Gaisman's razor blade. So this is often credited to King C. Gillette. It's not King C. Gillette's razor blade at all. It is Gaisman's razor blade. He also developed a much better mechanism for keeping these sharp, because sharpening was en masse, and the production of these things was a big problem. So he solved it by creating a machine that would sharpen these blades as well as produce them. And Gaisman is actually a genius. He has over 1,000 patents. He invented the swivel chair, the autographic camera, which Kodak ended up buying the rights for. And so much of what we use today was from carburetors and on, was invented by this guy called Henry J. Gaisman, a real genius. And the more I read about him, the more amazed I am at what he was able to produce. So this is the razor. Let's take a look at it. It's got a knurled handle. It's got these nice rims around it, which make it really, really good for gripping. It also has this wonderful head. Now this head, it's going to be recognizable to a lot of wet shavers who use Gillette products. And there's a good reason for it, is because Gaisman produced these razors, and King C. Gillette started to infringe the patent and ended up buying Gaisman out of the Autostruck factory that he owned. So there's no way he could have won the court case, so he just bought out Gaisman. And Gaisman ended up being the CEO of Gillette for decades. So most of what people think is King C. Gillette in terms of their razor heads and their design actually come from Probak, which is what Gaisman's patents. And let's start having a look at this. So it's got just a very lightweight handle, and the cool thing here is that the tabs, when you put a blade, are covered, but the safety bar is shorter than the tabs. And you can see that he even thought, you see that there's a little gap here between the base plate and the top cap, because he knew that guys wanted to use the point of the blade. So he even thought about how he could maximize the utility of the blade that's contained in the head of the razor. Genius. When we open it up, there's also a recess for the handle to sit in. Again, more genius. I mean, this razor is 90 years old, and he thought of everything, this guy. You can see all the features contained within this razor. Then when we open it up, the first thing that we see is these male tabs that protrude, and they clasp the corners of the razor blade. So again, no movement. He understood the importance of blade play in a razor, and he wanted no movement. He wanted it to be held stiff and securely 90 years ago. Still to this day, the Muley R89 and the Rockwell 6C, 6S has so much blade play in it. But all the way back 90 years ago, he understood that you didn't want blade play in the razor. You wanted perfect every single time, and you wanted to sit nice and snug in there. He also had these wonderful, wonderful studs. This is a Type 4 stud model from his patents. And what it means is, again, the blade sits on these studs, and it's secure. There's no blade play or movement. And then you have those 4 male prongs that sit in each corner, again, securing the razor. So this is secured from the top cap and the base plate with these studs. Incredible stuff. Just absolutely incredible. So let's load it up. We're going to take a Probak Gillette razor blade, and we're going to put that over the base plate. And then we're going to put the top cap in over the studs with these 4 male tabs and the post. Oop. Got to be so careful. Okay, and we're just going to screw it up. So we're good to go. And you can see how secure and snug with no blade play. Now, later on, much later on, one of Gaisman's legacy to men was to release the Gillette Tech when he was working for Gillette. And this has Gaisman's fingerprints all over it. You can see the similarities here in the head design. Inexpensive, universal access to shaving. And that's what Gaisman's legacy was. And again, you can see that there's 4 male corner tabs and studs that firmly and securely hold the razor blade so that there's no blade play. This is a obviously a solid bar with some ribbing on the sides, but when you put a blade into these razors, it's very, very secure. Okay, so enough discussion about Gaisman. Let's get into today's shave. So I'm going to be using Cella, as it's very historic, and I'm going to shave like as though 90 years ago a gentleman could have shaved the way I'm shaving today. So using this 1930s Probak legendary razor. Okay, so I'm taking a soap spoon and just extracting the amount that I need for today's shave, which is about 1 gram. We're going to put that into the bowl and I'm going to work up a lather. And let's talk a little bit more about open comb razors. So the reason why I think Probak's razor was so threatening to Gillette's models was because you could use any blade on Gillette's. You could use any blade that Probak made on any Gillette razor, but you could only use a Probak razor blade, the universal razor blade, on his razors, which made his unique proprietary idea much more commercial, you know. So he knew what he was doing. He knew how to make a great razor and how to turn it into a commercial success. Whereas Gillette, I think, was more of a one-trick pony. Gaisman just kept on inventing. In fact, he remained single for most of his life, and the reason why all the magazines and newspapers thought this incredible inventor, an extremely wealthy man, he ended up dying extremely wealthy, was single, was because he had over 1,000 patents. They said that he couldn't sleep at night and he didn't want to be disturbed from his work. So they said that he was just a kind of a mad inventor. Okay, let's wet the face. So he remained a bachelor for most of his life. And then what happened was that he was quite old, and I think he was in his 80s or something, and he married a 30-year-old nurse. Now, Cella is a very famous Italian soap, if you don't know it, and it smells of marzipan. And it's over 100 years old. They've been making stuff for 100 years. I'm just using a synthetic Yaqi brush, 24 millimeter. And let's get into the actual shave. Now, I also like this bow in the razor, which means that the foam and the residue can kind of stick with surface tension to the bottom of the razor. It's an interesting concept and very light with universal appeal and very affordable. And you can see, even with 3 days of growth, how efficient it is. Now, the reason why open combs, a lot of gentlemen think open combs are more aggressive than, say, a closed comb, is because there's obviously more blade directly on the skin as you're cutting. Now, this has that bow, so the shaving angle is rather different to, say, more modern razors. And the reason why people think it's more aggressive is because it's that much more efficient, because there's no safety bar in the way, and it clogs a lot less. That's why the Micromatic razor was called the clogless. This was advertised because of the open comb. So guys with heavier growth who hadn't shaved for maybe a week could use a razor and just mow through a week's worth of growth without having to worry about clogging, because you've got to remember that they were trying to steal the market from straight razors, which don't clog. Now, how does it feel to shave with one of these? It feels surprisingly okay. A little bit tinny, but it's clearly smashing the hair off the face. And whenever I shave with one of these old razors, it's like shaving with history. You know, I wonder who else has shaved with this 90-year-old razor. And it's clearly been well used and well loved. So any serious collector will probably have one of these razors, one of these Probak 1930 razors in their collection. And I think because of the shape of it, you can shave at many angles with this. It's not, you're not restricted. You have that ability to be able to use the edge of the blade quite liberally. So yeah, what I like about open combs is that they clog less and they're suited for multiple days of growth in a far more, I guess, universal way. And this Probak definitely is holding the blade nice and snug. It feels inexpensive though. I mean, when using heavier stainless steel razors, they feel a lot more luxurious. But, you know, Gaisman's idea to make a inexpensive, universally accepted razor, that's incredible. And his blades kind of killed, Gillette, because Gillette, I mean, their concept was to sell the safety razor extremely inexpensively and to make their profits on the actual blade themselves. So that was Gillette's whole genius, is that he saw a need and he was going to sell, or even still to this day, they give away Gillette handles to sell their cartridges, because that's where they were making all their money, on this disposability of the product. The fact that they're, you know, only used for a short period of time. Simple 2-pass shave today I'm going to do, just with the grain and across the grain for today. Save time on the video. Okay, looking good. Got a few abrasions there, just on the chin. Just here, and I think, so we'll get a little bit of styptic on it. Just rub it in. That's it. So the legendary Probak razor and the history of shaving. Now I'm going to include a link down below to a gentleman who produced some good videos on YouTube about the history of shaving. I think it's very, very underrated. It's only got 7,000 views, and I think it deserves, you know, every man to watch that video on the history of shaving. It's very important for all of us to know the past. So a little bit of inexpensive Gillette Nivea balm. So yeah, I personally think that the Gillette tech is his legacy to the world. He released a very inexpensive tech and just flooded the market so that the whole world could enjoy shaving. The writing was already on the wall as to the movement of shaving. So I think he gave that to the world very, very inexpensively. And still to this day, Gillette techs are all around the world, and especially popular in India as well. There's many shavers who use this type of razor. So that's today's video on a tribute to the wonderful, wonderful man that is Henry Gaisman, who did that for us men today. And he kind of is the legacy of King C. Gillette. So when you think of King C. Gillette, think of maybe Thomas Edison, and when you think of Gaisman, think of Tesla, the unsung hero of men's wet shaving still to this day. Thank you.